I can still hear the scrape of the wooden chair and the smell that always hit me when I opened my grandmother's kitchen door. Wood smoke, warm salt, and that faintly sweet, clean scent of rendered fat. On the counter sat a mason jar of white lard, solid, simple, unassuming, next to a pan that had been on the wood stove all morning. My grandmother fried until things were golden and crisper than anything you can buy now. She swore by that jar. "Good for the soul and the pan," she'd say. Fast forward to medical school and the years I spent advising patients. The textbook said, "Avoid saturated fat." Lard became shorthand for the enemy you removed from your shelves. It felt like abandoning a family habit for the safety of charts and guidelines. But over the last decade, I went back to the primary literature, followed uncomfortable threads, and tested things myself in the kitchen. What I found forced me to reframe a simple question. Was your grandmother right? If this is speaking to you, hit like, subscribe, and in the comments pick a side, type Team Lard or Team Oil, because we're going to walk through 7 important facts that change how you think about the fats in your house. To understand why lard vanished from the American kitchen, we need a short history lesson. In the 1950s, a graph circulated showing a tight link between saturated fat intake and heart disease. That graph became iconic. But the researcher behind it, Ansel Keys, used a subset of available country data, 6 countries, to draw his curve at a time when broader data existed. That selection shaped the narrative. Decades later, documents and reporting have shown that industry funding, most famously sugar industry influence on early nutrition research, helped steer public messaging about what was safe to eat. A JAMA report in 2016 highlighted how some funding and selective emphasis shaped early studies. This is not a conspiracy. It's a reminder that how evidence is collected and who pays for research can change what becomes common sense in the grocery aisle. So here are 7 facts you need to know about lard, vegetable oils, and the real risks in your kitchen. Each one is grounded in published research or documented industry practices. Where I refer to a study, the type of study and the citation will be shown for you to check. Fact 7. Many industrial vegetable oils are not pressed in your backyard. They are manufactured with heavy processing, including solvent extraction, intense refining, and deodorization. Soybean, corn, and some seed oils are commonly extracted using a solvent called hexane to separate oil from plant matter. After extraction, the crude oil undergoes bleaching, deodorizing, and high-heat refining to remove color, odor, and off flavors, producing a neutral, shelf-stable product. That neutral product is convenient for industry. It doesn't compete with flavors and has a long shelf life. But every step strips out natural antioxidants and creates new chemical byproducts. Packaging matters too. Polyethylene terephthalate, PET. Plastic, used for many bottled oils, can leach plasticizers such as phthalates into fatty liquids over time, especially when warmed or stored for long periods. Studies report associations between dietary exposure to these compounds and metabolic disruptions. The important word is associated, not proven causation in every case. But it's another reason to be thoughtful about how oils are processed and stored. Takeaway: refined vegetable oils are highly processed and can pick up contaminants from packaging. Treat them like industrial ingredients, not pristine food. Fact 6. Stability matters. Saturated and monounsaturated fats are more chemically stable under heat than polyunsaturated fats. Lard and butter contain higher proportions of saturated and monounsaturated fatty acids, which resist oxidation when heated. Many modern vegetable oils, soybean, corn, sunflower, are rich in polyunsaturated fats. Those many double bonds make them more reactive to heat, oxygen, and light. When polyunsaturated oils are heated, the fatty acids break down and oxidize more readily. Oxidation changes the oil's structure, generating compounds that don't belong in the body in large amounts. Laboratory studies and food chemistry research consistently show that oils with more polyunsaturates oxidize faster at frying temperatures than fats with fewer double bonds. Takeaway: for high-heat cooking, choose fats with higher thermal stability. Fact 5. Reusing oil multiplies problems. Each time oil is heated, especially polyunsaturated rich oils, it accumulates oxidation products, polymerized fats, and trace trans fats. Those chemical changes increase with repeated heating and with exposure to air. In kitchens and restaurants that reuse frying oil, measurements show higher levels of aldehydes and other toxic byproducts compared with fresh oil. These compounds can become airborne as fumes and ultrafine particles during frying, contributing to indoor air pollution. Occupational studies of cooks and workers exposed to cooking fumes have found associations with respiratory irritation and higher markers of inflammation. That doesn't mean a single home fry will ruin health, but habitual exposure, repeatedly reusing cheap seed oils for frying, adds a steady background of harmful substances. Takeaway: avoid repeatedly reusing frying oil. Discard oils after heavy use. Before we go further, I want to show you, visually and plainly, what I'm talking about in the kitchen. If you attempt anything similar at home, do so with caution. Perform it in a well-ventilated area. Avoid prolonged inhalation of any fumes. Keep a fire extinguisher nearby, and never leave hot oil unattended. Here's the setup I used. 3 identical pans over the same heat, a measured amount of soybean oil in one, rendered pork lard in the second, and extra virgin olive oil in the third. I bring each to a typical frying temperature and hold them there briefly, watching for color change, smoking, and smell. What you notice is immediate. The soybean oil darkens sooner and emits a sharper, acrid odor that many people describe as chemical or metallic. The lard browns more slowly and smells savory, like roasted meat fat. The extra virgin olive oil shows a fruitier, peppery aroma and resists heavy darkening for a while, provided it's truly high-quality extra virgin and not a refined product. These are subjective impressions, but they map to chemistry. The soybean oil generates more visible oxidation products and fumes at the same temperature. Remember, that smell you detect is not perfume. In many cases, it's low molecular weight aldehydes and other volatile compounds escaping into the air. Some of these compounds, like the ones I'll discuss next, are biologically active in ways that concern researchers. Fact 4. One of the aldehydes that gets attention in the lab is 4-hydroxynonenal, or 4-HNE. In plain language, 4-HNE is a toxic breakdown product formed when unsaturated fats oxidize. Laboratory and animal studies show that 4-HNE can damage proteins in DNA, interfere with normal cell signaling, and promote inflammation. In human tissues, higher levels of lipid oxidation products have been associated with markers of cardiovascular disease, neurodegeneration, and some cancers in observational research. That phrasing, associated with, is critical. We cannot, from those studies alone, say 4-HNE causes disease in people at typical dietary exposures, but the biochemical plausibility and animal evidence suggest it is biologically disruptive at sufficient levels. Food chemistry research measuring fried foods shows that fries cooked in polyunsaturated oils can contain higher quantities of certain aldehydes compared with the same foods fried in more stable fats. Takeaway: oxidized lipid products like 4-HNE are a plausible risk factor for chronic disease. Reducing exposure from repeatedly heated polyunsaturated oils is prudent. Fact 3. Not all animal fats are identical, and provenance matters. Lard from pasture-raised pigs contains a different nutrient profile than industrially produced fat. Pasture-raised animal fats can have higher levels of certain fat-soluble nutrients, such as vitamin D3, and some bioavailable fat-soluble vitamins and antioxidants, albeit in modest amounts. Lard is not pure saturated fat. It's a complex food matrix with both monounsaturated and saturated fats, and it can carry fat-soluble micronutrients depending on the animal's diet. Refined vegetable oils, by contrast, are stripped of pigments and many natural antioxidants during processing. That stripping reduces flavor stability and removes naturally protective compounds. Takeaway: if you choose animal fats, quality and source matter. Pasture-raised lard is nutritionally different from industrial rendered fat. Fact 2. There are people who need extra caution. If you have diabetes, insulin resistance, or a genetic lipid disorder such as familial hypercholesterolemia, the metabolic effects of saturated fat intake and changes in LDL cholesterol require individualized consideration. Some randomized trials and metabolic studies show that saturated fat can raise LDL cholesterol in many people. LDL remains an established risk marker for atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. For patients with diabetes or familial lipid abnormalities, extra virgin olive oil often remains the safer recommendation for routine cooking because of its consistent evidence for cardiovascular benefit in randomized and observational studies and its anti-inflammatory polyphenols. If you fall into these groups, don't make dramatic changes without consulting your clinician and, when possible, checking your lipids before and after dietary adjustments. Takeaway: if you have metabolic disease or familial cholesterol disorders, discuss fat choices with your healthcare provider. EVU is often preferable. Fact 1. Practical verdict for most household kitchens. For everyday cooking, especially at high temperatures like frying, avoid habitual use and repeated reuse of refined vegetable oils high in polyunsaturates, soybean, corn, and similar seed oils. Instead, for most metabolically healthy people, rendered animal fats such as lard can be a reasonable option for high-heat cooking because they're more stable. Extra virgin olive oil and avocado oil are excellent choices for many uses. Evo for lower to moderate heat and finishing dishes, where its polyphenols and flavor add health benefits, and high oleic versions of oils or pure avocado oil for higher heat. Prioritize unrefined, minimally processed oils when possible. Store oils away from heat and light, and avoid long-term storage in warm PET bottles. Crucially, don't repeatedly reuse frying oil and discard oil after heavy frying sessions. This is not a guarantee of disease prevention. No single change is a miracle, but a practical approach to reduce exposure to oxidized lipids and industrial contaminants. Takeaway: choose stability and quality, limit reuse. You might be asking, what about heart disease statistics and decades of public health messaging that told us saturated fat was the main villain? 2 points. First, public messages were shaped by the evidence and context of the time, some of it limited, some influenced by industry priorities. Second, science evolves. I used to tell patients to avoid animal fats almost categorically. Over time, as I read primary research on refined oils, oxidation products, and packaging, and as I saw how foods were manufactured, my view shifted. I still respect decades of cardiovascular research showing that certain patterns, especially diets rich in minimally processed plant foods and olive oil, reduce cardiovascular risk. What changed for me was nuance. Not all saturated fats are equal in their food matrix, and not all vegetable oils are automatically benign, particularly when refined and repeatedly heated. Let me be clear about what I am not saying. I am not claiming that eating lard will cure disease, or that switching oils alone will eliminate your cardiovascular risk. I am not telling anyone to stop medications or to forego medical advice. I am also not painting every vegetable oil with the same brush. Extra virgin olive oil, for instance, has robust evidence of benefit in many populations. What I am saying is that the blanket demonization of naturally occurring animal fats and the simultaneous embrace of highly processed seed oils deserve re-examination, especially when we consider chemical changes during refining and cooking. Practical steps you can take this week. Stop habitually buying large bottles of cheap refined soybean or corn oil for everyday frying and repeatedly reusing them. If you fry often, choose a more stable fat, lard or a high oleic oil for high heat. Use extra virgin olive oil for dressings, low to moderate heat and finishing. Store oils in cool, dark places. Prefer glass or metal containers if you can, and avoid leaving oils in hot cars or on hot countertops. If you have diabetes, insulin resistance, or known familial lipid disorders, consult your clinician before making major dietary changes and consider testing your blood lipids after any sustained change. And if you're cooking for others, prioritize ventilation and avoid practices that create heavy fumes. One practical note about safety and smell tests. It's tempting to do dramatic experiments at home. Hold your head over a pan and try to sniff the aldehydes. But don't. If you're curious, warm a small amount of each oil in a well-ventilated space and note differences in smell from a safe distance. Never inhale smoke directly, and don't leave oils unattended on heat. I owe you a small confession. For years I leaned into the conventional messaging. I recommended vegetable oils as heart-healthy and advised patients to cut back on butter and lard. That guidance made sense within the evidence frame I had then. But revisiting the primary studies, looking closely at food manufacturing, and doing simple kitchen experiments taught me humility. The right answer is rarely binary. Instead of lard good, oil bad, or the reverse, the practical goal is to minimize avoidable chemical exposures from highly processed oils and to choose more stable, less industrially altered fats when cooking at high temperatures. If you try this for yourself, don't make one-off judgments. Shift your oils for a month and observe how you feel, how your food tastes, and, if you're tracking labs, what your clinician reports. Come back in 30 days and tell us in the comments what changed. Energy, satiety, digestive comfort, or lab numbers. And if you want to go deeper, watch the linked videos on signs of arterial disease and how to clean up your fridge. Both will be suggested at the end. One last practical checklist before I close. Avoid refined seed oils for routine home frying. Don't repeatedly reuse frying oil. Prefer Evo for most uses and lard in moderation for high heat cooking if you are metabolically healthy. Buy oils from reputable sources and store them properly. And consult your doctor if you have diabetes, insulin resistance, or familial cholesterol disorders before making major changes. Was your grandmother right? In part, yes. She favored simple, minimally processed fat, used it regularly but not as an industrial additive, and prioritized food that tasted good and made sense in a whole food context. The blanket message that all saturated animal fat was the single dietary evil was too simplistic. The modern problem is not just the type of fat, but how we process it, package it, heat it, and reuse it. If this video made you rethink what's on your stove, subscribe and let me know, Team Lard or Team Oil, in the comments, and tell us what you'll change in your kitchen. Come back in 30 days and report your results. If you want a deeper dive, watch the next videos I linked, one on arterial health and another on practical refrigerator and pantry swaps that reduce processed food exposure. Above all, be skeptical of simple answers, be kind to yourself if you followed past advice in good faith, and talk with your clinician about any dietary changes, especially if you have metabolic risk. Thank you for joining me in a kitchen conversation that is equal parts science, memory, and practical cooking. Your grandmother's jar of lard wasn't a pharmaceutical miracle, but neither was it the single cause of modern disease. Understanding processing, oxidation, and provenance helps us make smarter choices about the fats we put into our pans and onto our plates.